I will continue my introduction to the re-establishment of a philosophy of nature, namely a speculative understanding of nature. And like I said in my previous videos, in order to arrive at speculation, you first have to go through the the Reflexionsbestimmungen, the determinations of reflection, which is the moment of the understanding, which is intelligence at work in the empirical sciences. So the author of this book on physics says that it takes a lot of intellectual power, so to speak, to understand that the moon rotating around the earth and the apple falling from a tree are two distinct phenomena which are actually the manifestation of the one same force, the one same universal law. And it took Newton to realize this. Whether the anecdote of the apple falling from the tree is true or not is irrelevant. And then he says that not speculative, but theoretical physicists spend many years of their lives, sometimes decades, trying to elaborate a theory. And once they believe they have found this theory and the facts contradict the theory, they abandon not the theory, but the facts. But a true theory must absolutely explain all facts. And that's why absolute idealism is also absolute realism, because it seeks to explain what is, not what should be, but it seeks to explain being. And one of the fundamental determination of Hegel's logic is to say that things are what they should be, because the das sollen, the ought to, the should, or the it ought to be, or it should be, brings forth its own becoming, and so things have become the way they had to be. So that's at the beginning of Hegel's logic. So he says that by elevating your thoughts to the fundamental laws governing the entire universe, you can explain the totality of the phenomena of the objective world. But the problem with modern physics is that they struggle to explain the transition between the objective world and the subjective consciousness, because they are materialists in a way. So for them, subjectivity is a product of the objective world, the world of nature, whereas from a Hegelian perspective, it is the objective world which is an alienation, a fallenness of the logical idea, and it is from the subject making itself object and reciprocally that physics must be understood. He says that the further down we go into the realm of chemistry, biology, and then all the social sciences, the further we move away from the fundamental laws of physics. But it's not impossible that all the behaviors are, in last resort, determined by fundamental logical, not logical, that's from a Hegelian perspective, but fundamental physical laws. And he says that the complexity of chemical and biological phenomena are so vast that we have to use empirical gatherings, and we cannot deduce theoretically, because it's so complex that the fundamental laws of physics or biology or chemistry cannot adequately be conceptualized. They must be we must use induction out of the gathering of empirical data. And he says that life is a very complex chemical process, and that chemistry is a very complex physical process. And my personal view is that physics is a very complex logical process. So the Hegelian trinity is logic, nature, coming back into logic through the spiritual activity of mankind. So it's an eternal triangle moving one through the other, and this is the life of God and the life of the Absolute. And there's a very famous quote in Spinoza saying that man is not an empire within an empire. So for Spinoza, man is an extension in the continuity of nature. So man obeys the laws of nature, and Spinoza is the crossing bridge between the hard sciences and the social sciences. And sociobiology is a Spinozian doctrine because it teaches us that our social behaviors and psychology and everything which derives from psychology, politics, economics, sociology, history, and all the social sciences, anthropology, and so on, and all even artistic, our appreciation of beauty and art is determined according to sociobiology by Darwinian process of evolution or whatever. But the sociobiology is the missing link, if I may use that expression, between the hard sciences and the modern anthropological social sciences. So it's in essence a Spinozian science, and the leftists love to explain all the bad behaviors of criminals and petty criminals and thieves and so on, and rapists and that, by saying, yeah, but they were determined by their socio-economic background, by their it's because society oppressed them. That's why they acted in these malevolent ways. And when I was a leftist, I believed this. But the problem with leftists is that they accept Spinozian determinism in the realm of the social sciences, but when you cross the bridge and say that social behaviors are determined by biological determinations, they refuse to go to the logical conclusion. And the right is the opposite. They praise biological determinism because it helps them give themselves a higher version, a higher view of themselves. Those who are happy or take joy and pride, which is misguided pride in being white. But then when you explain that the criminals are determined by the state of society to act the way they do, they will refuse. They will talk about morality, ethics, whatever. So both the left and the right are in a contradiction. And the only unifying principle is to explain that Spinozian determinism, namely that man is a part of nature, goes through the entire realm of human affair, and this higher truth is expressed in the philosophy of Hegel. So yeah, and yeah, the physicists seek to explain how the phenomenon of consciousness arise. Consciousness, from a cosmological Darwinian perspective, is a chemical structure within the brain, electromagnetic interconnections between chemical elements within the brain, which produce the perception of an objective world. But this is the naturalistic point of view. The truly Hegelian perspective is that it is an idea, that which is immaterial, which produces the physical reality. And I've read a book about Spinoza and neurobiology, and it explained that the feelings that we experience of anger, joy, sorrow, happiness, all hope, despair, and all that, all these feelings are triggered by certain chemical structures within our brains. And what every human brain seeks is a balance and a harmonious relationship of the chemical circuits within his brain. And this is why people seek mysticism, because in mystical insight you get an equilibrium, a balance between the opposites, and you enter a state of rest. And the reason why people are so unstable and unbalanced is, from a chemical biological standpoint, is because the chemical circuits and structure within their brain is imbalanced. And when I read this book, I found it was convincing from a materialist physical standpoint, the relationship between emotions and thoughts connected by the structure of the chemical the chemical movement within the brain. But a structure is an idea, it is a form. So there is a reciprocal determination. When you have good ideas, you feel good. When you feel good, you have good ideas, but when you feel bad, it forces you to reconsider your ideas. And if, from a material point of view, ideas are just chemical movement in the brain, when you feel bad, when you feel negative emotions, you are forced to move unconsciously, of course, to change the chemical reaction within your brain to try to reestablish balance. And so I said that Hegel's philosophy must explain everything, and Hegel's philosophy is nothing other than the self-explanation of everything. And this is what he calls the process of spirit. It's self-explanation of everything that is. Because nothing cannot explain itself. That's why nothing came out of itself and produced something. And this something, as I've shown in my previous videos, is logically determined to seek the complete self-understanding of itself and self-illumination of itself. And yeah, that's that for now.